Good morning. So thanks very much to the Shared Value Summit and for being here. Michael Porter, your talk made me smile. We are just beginning. So I'm here to tell you a story. I'm with Bridge International Academies. I'm the Vice President and Global Head of Insights and Strategy at Bridge. And Bridge, for those in the room that don't know, we're a social enterprise. So we're in the business of doing good. And what we do is we provide great schools, primary schools, to families living on less than $2 a day per person around the world. We have over 500 schools around the world, mainly in Kenya, Uganda, Nigeria, India, growing in Liberia, increasingly working with a lot of governments. But that's not the story I'm here to tell you about today. What does it mean to create shared value? You know, especially when you're in the business of tackling social challenges, and you're in the business of doing good. You know, it can be easy to assume that you are creating shared value with your customers or with the people that you work with or that you serve, right? How do you get that clarity, as Dr. Porter talked about this morning, right? How can you be sure that you're actually creating shared value? So take Bridge. We have great schools, right? We have technology in our schools. We have great teachers. We have sustained learning gains. We're making a difference. But we asked ourselves a few years ago, we looked, you know, that's the work that my team does. We asked ourselves, are we delivering value to our parents in the most meaningful way possible? How can we deepen the value that Bridge delivers to parents and improve their engagement with our schools? And how can we, ultimately, challenge some of the assumptions that we might have about our parents, right? We can't assume, and we always are asking that at Bridge. So what we did, this simple inquiry actually led us on a quest of creating shared value. And this sent us on a journey which ultimately led us to identifying a very influential group of mothers. And here's my first spoiler alert. Those are those mothers. And with that, we built the Bridge Supermoms platform. And this platform, this is a women's empowerment platform. And don't drown out with when I say empowerment platform. There's a little bit more to this story. Basically, this platform tapped into and celebrated the powerful role that mothers are playing in the demand for learning and improved schools in low-income communities across Kenya. And in turn, by creating this platform, we have seen improved engagement in our schools, improved loyalty with our schools, and improved champions for education, great education in the communities that we serve. So let me go forward. There we go. So let me tell you how we did this. We have to go back to 2015, August 2015, when I sent out research teams across Kenya. And the core of this was to get that clarity, right? Spend time with parents, learn from them. And we had a couple assumptions going into this project, I'll be honest. One of them was we knew that women were interested in education. We knew that they were important to education. But what we kept hearing from our parents was that it was men that ultimately made the decisions, right, when it comes to the financial decisions in the home. And so, we took a look at that. And actually what we found, and here's the next spoiler alert, it turned out to be the other way around. Notably, we found that the role of women are changing the communities that we serve, and that they are increasingly driving decisions around education. But interestingly, they were really driven to right the wrongs of their own development when they were growing up. We heard from a number of women that expressed feelings of being robbed from educational opportunities when they were growing up, not being sent to school, being taken out too early. And this really has influenced their views on what parenting is today. And a good parent, what we found, is one who, understands and values a quality education, and number two, invests in it. Now, to give you a sense of this context, I have to go back to 2000 for a second. So where did this, changing norms come from? In 2000, the Millennium Development Goals were created, and they listed 8 goals, of which one was universal primary education. And this stimulated a lot of growth of primary schools across the developing world, right? Government started building classrooms, expanding schools. It was great. It was getting more kids into classrooms. But here's the thing. They weren't learning in these classrooms. So there was this focus, this drive to bring the infrastructure, but once inside, the teachers weren't equipped. They were neglecting the students, or the schools were lacking the fundamental materials that they needed to actually drive education, learning outcomes, right? And here's the thing, while these stats are from 2015, but these parents in the mid-2000s, they knew that this was going on. They knew that these were not good schools. But their interest in education and their drive to get their kids into school was something that they started to want, right? There was something that really started to pick up. And what ended up happening was social entrepreneurs, community leaders, educators started building non-formal schools, private schools, that families living on less than $2 a day, as little as $125 a day, could go to. And parents responded en masse. There are now over 10,000 of these schools in Kenya, over 300,000 of these schools in India, over 20,000 of these types of schools in Lagos, Nigeria alone. So that's a context that we work on. Now let's go back to our mothers. When we saw this, when we took that into account, we actually saw that these mothers their value of education and that experience of their own had really given them a fire to do differently for their own kids. And they were increasingly investing and influencing education decisions. And this wasn't really coming up so strongly in our surveys, and that's the important part of the story. We thought we had it right, but actually we were missing a really big component. And so what we saw is that these women were getting out and talking to women about shopping around, looking at different exams that were coming out at schools, really driving the conversation on quality education in their communities and influencing decisions in the home. Actually, one of the key things that they were doing was starting to get the financial resources so that they could actually drive those decisions. So they would use things like savings groups and things that are called like merry-go-rounds, where every week women come to contribute a little bit of money, and then someone takes the pot home every week. So they have some substantial income to work with. And what we found through all of that work, what was actually happening, is that these women were actually on the hunt for three things: awareness, action, and connection. These are the big three themes that emerged from our research. They were actively seeking to build awareness around the financial resources within their communities so that they could open doors. They were seeking access to markets so that they could actually engage in things like choosing a good school and getting their kids into a better school. And they were using and getting access to connection with other women to empower themselves and to empower others. So they would come together in groups to get additional resources, to share information, to talk about what it means to be a good mother. So what do? We came back, we saw this big, huge, we finally could see it, right? We finally had that clarity. But what do? How do we actually meaningfully engage these awesome women? So we created what we call the Bridge Supermamas platform. And we kicked this off in 2015, in December, with an inaugural conference that essentially brought 1,200 women from across Kenya to do exactly what they wanted to do, to engage in conversations about education, to also connect and talk about, to build their awareness around opportunities in their communities, to get access to additional information around how to maybe grow or develop their business, to connect with other women and learn from them. And the very cool thing is that when we actually sent these women back, so we had a 2-day conference. You'll see there on the bottom left is a wrapper. That was a Supermamas wrapper that we created and gave to all the women. And we sent them back to their communities. And we didn't do much. We actually just gave them, this was in 2016, gave them a few, kind of ideas of what they could do. We gave them, some tools to our principals and teachers, how to engage them. But we wanted to sit back and test this hypothesis. If we really focused on this influential group and gave them a platform that was meaningful to them and connected it to the school, what would happen? And what happened was, I'll just take a few more minutes. What happened was, a lot. We had Supermama groups that were not only wearing and more proudly talking about the powerful role that they were playing in their communities and their families, But then they were also going out and partnering. We saw our value as a company actually improve greatly. They were going out and partnering with organizations like Médecins Sans Frontières and other community-based organizations to bring things like health awareness into the schools. Top picture up there is a hand washing program that came in. They also partnered with programs that could bring other health programs. They did a program where they passed out sanitary napkins to girls. They went out and partnered with local leaders to bring local leaders into our schools so those local leaders could talk to our kids about reaching their dreams. And they did these things again and again. And more importantly, they were talking proudly about what it means to be this great parent, right? And the work that they were doing around seeking financial resources, around accessing markets, around connecting with other women, were now bounded, interwoven with our school. So here's the cool thing. So we're 2018. This has been going on. We've been observing. And last year, we started hearing from the men, the fathers, the papas. What about us? Can't we have a super papa group? Me too. We're involved in this too. It's about us, right? We are developing our societies together. We are developing our communities together. And now we've empowered these women and celebrated this super parent idea. And so what we're doing this year is we're actually piloting some super papa groups. And we're also working on improving. We've been doing additional research in our other markets in India, Nigeria, to see if this super mama platform could actually be expanded. And it can, and it will. Here's my call to action to you. We're talking about shared value, right? And we talked about at the beginning of today the clarity that we're all looking for, that is needed, right? My call to action to you is do what we did. Ask yourselves, even if you're in the business of doing good, before you just start throwing things at the wall, right? What do we know about our customers? What would be meaningful? Do we know? What are our assumptions? And then go out and figure that out. And it might surprise you. You may end up having a super mama group like us. Thank you.